Youngman Brown here. Just wanted to give you a heads up and let you know that today's episode is the first part of my two-part interview with DTM, aka Daniel Flores. I split it up into two parts because it ended up running a little bit longer. So I decided to make two episodes. So I hope that today's episode gives you that push that you need. That being said, let's get going. Your Creative Push, episode 16.
Get out the house. Go somewhere. Be around other artists.
Welcome to Your Creative Push. This is the podcast that pushes you to pursue your creative passions. I'm your host, Youngman Brown, and my guest today is Daniel Flores. Daniel, aka DTM, aka the Creative Genius, is not just a man of many names, but a man of many talents as well. And these talents include graphic design, drawing, painting, tattoos. But Daniel, the one talent that I don't see you listing on your social media is podcasting, man. You have like a really, really good podcast. And
Thank you.
I think it's a great compliment to this podcast because it's almost like our listeners can graduate from this podcast and then listen to yours to find out more about the biz. So could you tell me a little bit more about the podcast?
Yes, the Artist King podcast is a list of artist interviews where we interview artists on their life story. And it's important for me to hear another artist's life story because as an artist, sometimes you feel weird for the kind of things that you like to do, for the things that you're interested in, and for that passion that nags at you when you're not doing it. And that's art. And so it's easy to find a group of artists around town and meet with them and talk to them and share your art, and Atlanta's very good for that. But you always feel like you're falling short. I don't know. I feel that way. And I have those doubts in my mind, even though I've been a professional artist for 20 years. And so I like to hear other artists' story on how they got started, where they began, when did they first touch art, who inspired them, and hear the story of how they developed their life in art and become the artists that they are today. And some of the artist interviews we do are artists who are just about to start their career, who are in the beginnings of their career, and some have been in the business for 30, 40 years. I've had some podcasts where artists are easy to talk to and they speak for 3 hours, and then other artists are very shy and will give me one single syllable answers to my questions. And it's like I'm an interrogator, and they last 20 minutes. And what I want to get out of those podcasts and those interviews is to hear where their story starts, and it usually starts at a very young age, as little kids, as we all at one time drew with crayons on the walls of your house, and develop from there. And so I want to, very much like your podcast, I want to give other artists who are on the fence, other artists who are looking in from the outside at the art business, at the art world, at their art life. And I want them to think that, you know what, this artist who I admire started his career by accident, or he decided one day to push through, or whatever the situation is, some other person will relate to it, and they'll listen to the podcast and say, you know what, if he can do it and I admire him, then I can do it too. And then they go out there and try some things out. There's education that comes into play that any artist should have. There's mentoring that any artist should look for, and a bunch of other parts related to what a full rounded artist should be. But this is just the beginning, and I want to spark that beginning in any person who feels creative in any kind of way.
I think it's inherent in every person, this kind of itch for creativity, this itch for art. And I literally think it's in every single person, and it's just a matter of when it kind of leaves you, like when you kind of get killed by society. But when you get killed by like the 9 to 5, whether, you know, your 9 to 5 is school or it's kids or it's, you know, your actual job, I think life requires so much time out of you that you can't quite find the time to do that creative thing. So I love the idea of going back to the origins of all these people, and that's such a great concept.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And it is a very selfish reason why I started any of this. It's because I want to know.
Yeah.
Artists that I've come across are open to dialogue and sharing ideas and resources, and but I want more, and so I thought of the podcast as a way, and actually started a long time ago as video interviews,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to know more about their technique and their style, and where they get their creative energy from, and so on. All these abstract things, and I found myself drawn into what their story is all about, and so now I share it with the world. But I started off as just me being curious and saying, well, this guy is really not gonna want to talk about his life to me. He doesn't know me. But if I do it as an interview with a video, they might open up.
Yeah.
And there it went.
Yeah, it's amazing what people are willing to show.
Yeah.
And I feel people are very, very generous in giving their time, and also, just showing their past and also their skills, and willing to teach as well.
Yes. Yes.
That's why podcasting is so great, because you can, like you said, really build up that community. For me, it's selfish as well, because I need that kind of a daily push from other people to be able to, get past all my stuff.
There you go. That's right.
So your creative origins, let's talk about that, since you're busy interviewing other people about where they started. Tell us a little bit about where you started.
I started with pencils and paper a long time ago in a galaxy far away, and it I just I always admired art as a little child. I was born and raised in L.A., East L.A., and in my neighborhood and everywhere in LA, it's becoming popular in Atlanta now, but in LA, it's always been murals all over the place. And being a Mexican American, Mexican born in the United States, as a Chicano, and our neighborhoods are filled with Aztec stories, Catholic stories, everything related to Mexicans and the Chicano struggle. And but the art is amazing. Growing up, they're everywhere, and I always seem to have pencils and paper somewhere somehow, and I just draw all the time. Even I remember having to write my letters when I was learning to write, and instead of making a simple A, I made a fancy A. And it was fancy according to a small child, but I wanted to have some artistic freedom in what I drew and what I wrote. My mother has a drawing dated 1973, and I'm 1975, and I was born in 72, so I was 3 years old, and it's a picture of a triangle with teeth moving up to the water that is illustrated by a line going across the piece of paper and a person in a boat, and it says Jaws in big letters. So that's that Jaws poster, and I drew it when I was 3 years old. And I don't know why I just keep on drawing. And when I was 8 years old, I moved to Mexico for 5 years. I lived in Mexico, and my aunt, she was an artist and she could draw, but she was just drawing for herself. She would draw in notebooks and keep it to herself, and she let me see them. And that's when and she would write little notes as to what's going on the scene, and that's when I realized that you can draw stories and you can communicate so much more with drawings than what I thought just drawing was all about. And of course, comic books and pop culture, animation, cartoons. As time went on, I realized that there were people out there in the world who got paid to draw, and that was it. I was hooked. I didn't know anybody in my family besides my aunt who could draw. I didn't know anybody in school who could draw. I didn't know anyone in my neighborhood who could draw. I was the only one who could draw, all the way up to high school. And I never looked at what would make me a working artist. I never looked into college or art classes. I actually did take one art class in the 10th grade, and I almost failed it. I was not interested in the things they wanted us to draw week in and week out. I did learn techniques that I kept one to this day, and but drawing fruit, drawing a towel that was sitting on a chair, that was not interesting to me. I wanted to draw Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I was raised in LA in those days when the Lakers and the Raiders were ruling the world, and so I felt almost failed it because I didn't go to class, and I hardly did the work. And ever since then, I said, "Nah, I'm just gonna try out this art, however it comes to me." And I used to read a lot of Batman comics, a lot of muscle magazines to get the body muscles out, drawing them out, and joined the Marine Corps. I was gone to the Marine Corps. I was the only artist still for a long time. And then in the Marine Corps, I met people who were from Atlanta. And then that's when I came to Atlanta because in '94, Atlanta was the up and coming city with the Olympics coming in '96. And so I came to Atlanta, and that's when I found a big community of artists everywhere. And now was not the only artist that I knew of. There was a bunch of others. I not into college thing. I don't like school, so all I did was just hang out with other artists and do what other artists do and check out their sketchbooks and ask them questions. And within the year that I was here in Atlanta, I started an apprenticeship as a tattoo artist, and that I met an artist there during my apprenticeship who is my brother-in-law now, and I just hung around other artists all the time, and I learned how to paint by looking at other artists paint. I learned Illustrator and Photoshop by asking other artists about things, and it has been snowballing ever since, and it has not stopped. I love being an artist. I love creating. I love the whole process of coming up with new concepts and ideas that don't exist anywhere, and that people can look at and have an opinion of, either good or bad. As long as you have an opinion, then I feel like you've engaged with something that I created.
Awesome. That's such a great path that you just took us down. And one of the themes of it that I want to just bring to the surface is how you just kept pushing through, whether there was one person there that you knew that also did art, or nobody there, or your teacher.
Right.
You just kept pushing through. And I also, yeah, dude, what you said about the one class that you took on art, which is awesome, because I don't think you need a typical education,
Right.
As far as art or writing or really anything. Yeah, there's so many resources out there on YouTube, lynda.com, a friend. You know, there's so many different resources to teach yourself. And I think that, as you said, you put a towel on a chair or a plant on a table, and you tell somebody who, any kind of artist, there's so many different types of artists, and you tell them all to paint the same thing. I think that's detrimental to art in general, is to say, hey, this is what you should be drawing. I think it's your responsibility to do what's in your heart and what's in your mind. And I think a lot of, that's what college can do, can actually do to people, is push you in a different way. I think you have this idea in your brain, you should really, really go as hard as you can for that idea and ignore everything else.
Right. And I hear that story from lots of artists who've been to college, who've been to art school, and they're like, the first full year sucks because we had to do all this basic stuff, and it wasn't until the second year when I actually got to touch the type of work that I wanted to do that got me into school in the first place. And it's like, to me, I'm very free and in my creativity, and that's how I learned. It has to be free and open to whatever, and open to what I'm looking for, and that's what I search for. And I'm sure some people do need the school. I was just not one of them. Not for me.
Good. Stand strong.
That's right.
So would you say that, like, when you got to Atlanta, that was how old were you then when you got to Atlanta?
I was 22 years old. It rained for a whole month.
God.
30 days. And it used to be that way, where it would rain a whole 30 days in September, October. And up until then, I had no formal training. I don't have any formal training. I would just draw and sketch and draw things for people, and I knew I wanted to do comics. I came, and I thought I would come to Atlanta and do comic books and get into the comic book field. And then someone introduced me to tattoos. I walked into a tattoo shop. They liked my work. And back in those days, in 95, 94, 94, yep, there was maybe 5 tattoo shops in the whole state. And now there's 5 tattoo shops in every neighborhood. And so I don't think that anybody could walk into a shop and get the apprenticeship that I got just walking in. But because back in those days, there was not that many tattoo places. And they loved my artwork, and they asked me if I wanted to learn. And I said yes. And that's it. That was the first step.
And would you say that's like the first time that you like found a community, like that you felt like, I guess, not that you felt uncomfortable before, but was this the first time you felt like okay with art?
Yes, I would say that yes, because even growing up, my mother was not one person to encourage me in my art.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up with just my mother and my brother, and so money was very tight, and so she didn't buy me art materials. I didn't have art materials growing up. I just had paper and pencils, and that's because I got them from school. I would take them from school. I would hoard whatever I could find, and then take it home and draw. And even one time, my mother loves me. I know that. But at that time, she said, "You're wasting paper. Why are you just wasting paper?"
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, because I couldn't say this out loud to my mother, I thought to myself, "But you're not buying any of this paper." And so what does it matter? I didn't have the encouragement or support. And when I came to Atlanta, and I guess I walked through that shop, and the people who I met here in Atlanta who saw me as an artist, they encouraged me to try to go. And a friend of mine, he drove me to a tattoo shop, and he pulls over, and he says, "Go in there and show him your work." And it was a surprise because we were just hanging out, driving around town that day. And but I always carried my portfolio. I always carried my artwork. I always carried my sketchbook and pencils. And I was surprised that we stopped here. And he didn't tell me we were going to come here. I was not prepared. It was not something that I had thought of. But other people were encouraging me to try it out, and any kind of art. And this one friend, he just took me to the tattoo shop and said, "Hey, walk on in there, show them your work." And then that's the day that started my apprenticeship, because they accepted me, they liked my artwork, and they saw the potential. And yes, I felt very comfortable. I felt like, yes, these are my people. This is what I want to do. Um, I'm not into needles because I never liked shots, but but I'll do a tattoo in a second. Yes, I will. And yes, it was a sense of community. It was a sense of belonging. It was a sense of, this person can tell me something about the art that I'm trying to do, and he can see what I do. He can feel it. He can give me insight into something that I'm barely jumping into, and that was amazing. And it's something that I push all artists to do. I always tell them, get out the house, go somewhere, be around other artists. Some artists are very introvert. Some artists, and art takes a long time to create. So we're very lone type of people who sit alone in a house or a table somewhere drawing, and have very little interaction with others because we're working on whatever the art we're working on. And some people are comfortable that way, and then not open to getting out the house to meet with other people and other artists and discuss. But that's very necessary. It's very important, because you don't know what kind of knowledge or advice or wisdom somebody will impart by looking at your art and say, I see what you're going with right there. Try this little thing into it, and it may change your whole world.
You got to put yourself out there.
Yes.
If you're listening to this and you do artwork, or you haven't done artwork yet, just start doing it, and then start showing it to people. You'd be amazed what kind of the universe will bring to, like, the tools that it will bring to your door once you actually put your stuff out there and say, hey, this is who I am now, or this is who I've always been. Check this out. And you'll be surprised the advice and the encouragement that you get from that, and it'll really boost you.
Yes, there's plenty of drawing sessions here in Atlanta. This one particular drawing session has been going on for 20 years. It's every Monday. I heard about it at one time, and I couldn't believe that people just came together to sit around and draw at a cafe with live music, and you can order food, and there's tables full of artists everywhere. And so I went. The first time I went, I just went to go check it out. I didn't bring any sketchbook. I didn't bring any art. I just came to see what this place was. And I met a few artists, and I said hello, and they all looked at me and looked back at their book. Keep on drawing. And I couldn't understand, like, what's going on? Why are they not friendly? Went home and thought about it, and I said, you know what? It's because they think I'm just some person looking to just look at their art.
You're not in the club, son.
Yeah, right. And so I said, I need to show them who I am. And so instead of talking about it, be about it. So the next week I went back and I brought me a couple of my sketchbooks. And I walked up to artists and said, how you doing? I said, let me check out your work, man. And I would hand them my book at the same time. And that's when the smiles and the conversation came in. And I clearly remember meeting an artist, and his name is W. And that one, I saw his art and I was blown away. And he's a regular person sitting here in the club, talking to everybody, being friendly. And ever since then, I followed his work. I stay close to what he does. I have regular meetups with him. We talk over the phone a lot. It all started because at that day, he looked at my work and he gave me some advice. The very first time I ever meet him, did not ask for it, but of course I was open to it. I'm always open to it, and he always gives me some advice. And ever since then, he's always given me advice. Every few months, he'll look at my work and say, "I like what you're doing there," and then he'll tell me some techniques and things that I could do with that drawing and the art and the style. And he said, "You'll like what you do. You'll like what you do," and it's always great. That is when you get into your real community, when you find the real people who care and are passionate about that same thing that you are about. You need that.
It's very necessary because, especially if you haven't gotten to it yet, this thing that's been on your mind, then, well, you're not a very good motivation for yourself. So you need to put yourself out there and get somebody to get on your ass, you know?
Yes, yes. And that's also important, is having people to bounce off ideas, people to check with you and on what your progress is like. That's one of the questions that we ask ourselves all the time whenever we see another artist. Last night we were at an event and we bought a bunch of art prints from a friend of mine. He had some new artwork, and we knew he was out there, and we got the prints because that's his new work. And and one of the questions that we have for each other when we see each other is, what you working on now? You know, what you got going on?
What are you up to?
Yes, and that means I want to hear about your art stuff. Yes, the wife and kids. Yes, sure. It's been unceasingly warm here in Atlanta. You know, and in politics, no. The real conversation artists want to have with other artists is, what are you working on? Tell me about it. And artists ask me that all the time. You know, what's next, Dan? What's going on? And so that's the part that you want to share. That's the part they're interested in, and you don't have those kind of conversations with anyone else.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's a special connection. So get out there and get those special connections.
Yes, that's right. That is very correct.
Dan, so you do a lot of things, as we've already talked about. But what would you recommend to someone like who has a lot of ideas similar to yours? You know, a lot of things running through their heads, a lot of creative impulses, but hasn't started any of them. What would you recommend to them?
I would tell them I have a process that I outline with artists when I sit down and talk to them. And it starts off with asking, what's your vision for yourself? What would you like to see? It's kind of abstract thinking, and but it leads to everyday schedule and planning. And if you see yourself drawing comics a year or 5 years from now, if you see yourself showing off at a gallery, some fine art, if you see yourself cashing checks with your art, and you're sitting at home at your home office and just cranking out artwork. If you see yourself doing art with the community or live art at an event, wherever you see yourself in your mind's eye, you have to close your eyes and imagine who the artist that you want to be. And it doesn't have to be very clear. Just imagine that, and then think about, well, what's it gonna take to get there? Is it going to take school? Is it going to take an apprenticeship somewhere? Is it going to take finding a mentor in a particular industry? Is it going to take just hanging out and getting to meet uh, gallery owners? What is it going to take to get you to that vision? And that's where you start. You don't have to know the whole plan. You just have to know where to start and what you need to do to get somewhere. And as you take those first steps, the next steps will open up. Those people who you're looking for will come into your life, and they will openly give you advice and resources, because I don't know, I feel like I enjoy seeing the success of other artists. I enjoy seeing artists push ahead and get something that they wanted, that I even feel like I wanted. And it's like, if they can do it, then that means I can do it, and now I'm gonna push harder. And as you see other artists develop and further ahead, that gives you tips and advice on what you should do next. Okay, so this artist did an art show, and it was successful, but he had 30 paintings. Well, I need to work on 30 paintings.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look a little closer and say, well, not only did he have 30 paintings, but he had a story to go with it. What's the story? There's a particular artist here in Atlanta who, for the last 10, 15 years, has been painting nothing but himself. Literally, he paints himself. He has so much symbolism in each particular painting, that it tells a story, and it's the story of society. And he did a High Museum event early this year at the High Museum of Art in Atlanta, the top museum in this city, and I'm sure there's similar ones in other cities. It's called the High, and he sold a bunch of artwork. He had a big showing, seeing a lot of success, but it took him 15 years to work on those pieces to tell that story to get to this point.
Right.
And so if you're looking at another artist and, well, he did some whole bunch of pieces, he did them of himself, but there's a story. What's that story? I need to work on my story.
Mm.
So anytime you set off on a path, you look at the artist ahead of you, look at the vision that you see of yourself, see what steps you need to take first, and look at those artists ahead of you who are on that same path. If you're a tattoo artist, because I've been doing tattoos for 20 years now, I still admire other artists, and I look at their work and I say, how did they do that? How could they get that type of technique into the skin? And you go search for that, and you go look for more information, and so that you can get to the next step. I want to be a great tattoo artist. I want a line out the door wanting to get a tattoo from me. I want my schedule to be packed, and I'm just cranking out some beautiful tattoos on the stuff type of artwork I want to do. No more names, no more crosses, no more little bitty nothings. I want some awesome art that I want to do for myself. It all starts with the first step, and visualizing what it is that you want to do, and then getting out there and saying, well, who's in that same path, and what can I learn from those people? It goes deeper than that. I have a whole little thing that I do with artists. It includes planning those steps. It includes identifying what those steps are. It includes putting those steps into your schedule, because life gets at you, and before you know it, this week is gone, the month is gone, the year is gone, and you're like, oh, I'm not doing anything that I thought I was going to do. I didn't finish this type of art. I didn't finish this project. And you have to put it into real life. You have to put those projects, those ideas into real dates on your schedule, and say, this date is blocked off. This time when I get off of work, this day when I get off of work, that those next few hours are blocked off, and I'm working on my art, or I'm working on this particular project, and I'm outlining what that project is. So when that day comes and that hour comes, I already have an outline what I need to do, and I don't think about it. I just go do it. That is where it comes down to. What is your schedule like? Are you making time for your art? I know I talk a lot, but I'm going to give you another story.
Please. This has been the best answer yet. So much good stuff, dude. Seriously.
Awesome. Awesome. So I was at a Dragon Con, and Dragon Con is this big comic book convention that's turned into a cosplay
Okay.
convention here in Atlanta. It draws a couple 100,000 people, but it started off as just as a comic book convention. And in the early days, I went and I was in there just looking around. I couldn't afford to pay to get into the actual convention part, so I was roaming the halls of the hotel. Came across a young artist who was selling black and white prints of his comic book, and I started to talk to him, and he was young, my age at the time. I was in my early 20s, and I asked him. I said, "Well, how long did it take you to do this?" And I was in awe that he had put together a comic book on his own. It was not a Marvel Comics. It wasn't DC Comics. It was just his own black and white copy paper, folded in half comic book. And I asked him questions like, "How long did it take you? How did you think of the idea? How much drawing time is it required?" And then I asked him, "Do you have a regular job?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, when do you find the time?" And he says, "If you really want it, you'll find the time."
Mm.
And it hurt me when he said that,
Mm.
because I was like, whoa, that means I do have the time also. And I have a regular job at that time. I was still working a regular job, washing dishes or something. And I said, that means that I if I really want this, I have to, like, all my waking time, all my waking moments, all my free time is no longer free. This is what I have to do. This is what I want. I want to be like this guy. I want to be able to have something in my hand and say, yes, I created this. And ever since then, that's the advice that I give other artists. If you really want it, you're going to find the time. We waste so much time watching TV, hanging out. When I was younger, it was the club, hanging out Friday night, Saturday night, even at the bar, drinking a beer. And I'm sure there are many other activities that don't require drinking that people do. Um, but it's like, you know what? You have to start setting some of this time aside for this art. You have to start setting a time aside for the project that you want to see come to life. Those paintings are not going to paint themselves. That comic book is not going to draw itself. You can talk about it all day long, but that's not going to make that art come to life. It's actual doing it. It's actually sitting down and finding a space to work with. I know an artist who works at Starbucks. He works in big sheets of paper. He draws, and he takes up a whole little table all by himself, and puts on his headphones and he draws, draws, draws. So you don't have to have like a studio. You don't have to have a big table. You don't need a whole lot of things to set you up to do this art thing and put the time into it. You just gotta sit down and go at it. I'm working with a friend of mine who's working on this comic book. I have all this comic book paper. I have the exact dimensions. I have a drafting table. I'll sit down and I start writing my comic book ideas. This guy, he uses any kind of sheet of paper, grabs it, and draws another panel, puts it away. And when he gets another chance, he finds another sheet of paper. Of course, he gets paper everywhere.
Right.
And he'll draw another panel and so on. And then later he'll scan it in and then compose it as a comic book. Me, I'm thinking to myself, I need to compose this page and do a thumbnail and then draw the big sheet and then sketch it out on the sheet and then see if that's what I like and then play with it and so on and so forth. And this guy just does it. So it's like you just have to find the time and then just put it together. No matter how it looks, no matter how bad you feel it may be, just put it together. And when you get out there and share with other artists, they're the first ones to say, "Yeah, I like what you did there, but what if you try this? What if you try that?" And I like to say, not just get out there to find drawing groups at the club, at the coffee shop, but find drawing groups, discuss the business of art, where artists discuss techniques and share. And then that may include a class that you may have to take a $15, $25 class, $100 workshop, something. There's things out there that you can find where artists are sharing and they're giving you step-by-step instruction on how to even do a comic book. What's the first step? What's the second step? How do I get from here to there? It's overwhelming. Sometimes art is overwhelming. You see your vision, you see another artist and you think that's what you want, and it's not an overnight thing. And then you start thinking about all the steps. You're like, whoa. And so it's easy to turn that off and say, yeah, I'll get to it when I'm ready. And no, we need to sit down, find the time, and then find other artists who can give you tips on how to get step by step.
My mind is blown.
Good.
No, there's so much good stuff, and I took a lot of notes during that. But I think the most important thing you said is set aside time. And the other thing is the resistance, like the going to the bar or coming home and watching TV, having a drink, or whatever the vice or whatever the thing that you're doing that is keeping you from doing your art. Another thing to think about is sometimes it's not just you're doing those things because you like them. Sometimes you're doing those things as a distraction from doing the art, from doing like the thing you're supposed to be doing because you're scared,
Yeah.
That was something that I had for like 2 years. It took me to do this project that I do on YouTube until I finally admitted, I'm just doing this stuff to distract myself because I'm afraid of doing this new thing and failing or it sucking. So what if it sucks? You just got to do it.
Yes. Yep. And that's a self-doubt. It comes into everybody's life. Everybody has that self-doubt. When you really care about something, when you really want this to be the thing that drives you, it's the doubt will creep in because you're not sure if it's going to be accepted the way you see it. You're not sure if others are going to get the point. You're not sure if others are going to judge it and say, you know what, this guy, he don't know what he's talking about.
And that's where we're going to end the first part of my discussion with DTM. Lots of good stuff in there, and hopefully you see that he does know what he's talking about. Tomorrow we're going to get into some more of the lessons that he's learned and his advice to people just starting out or also people who have already started. Definitely be sure to check it out tomorrow. I'd like to take a quick second to give some iTunes shout-outs. Jeff Agostinelli said, great inspiration for creatives. Love that Youngman is focusing on creatives and highlighting their journey. Blissful Dad said, I'm excited for the show. I listened to the first episode and hit the subscribe button. Tima Noto said, I have a hard time staying motivated when it comes to creative work, and this definitely is helping me. Anissa Mack said, love this show. Shows how artists can make a living from their creativity. Danny Johnson said, exciting and inspiring. What a great show full of awesome content. And Luli NH said, as an artist, I feel we are underserved in spoken media. It's great to hear our thoughts and triumphs shared and supported. Thank you, Youngman, for creating this podcast. You're welcome, and thank you for listening to this podcast. And thank you especially for all those kind 5-star ratings and reviews on iTunes. You're all entered into our contest, which is ending tomorrow night. So you have but a few hours to get in your ratings and reviews on iTunes and be entered to win $100. Or if you don't win that, there's also a second prize $50 and third prize $25. You can find out all those details on yourcreativepush.com/contest. Hopefully we were able to inspire you to do your work today. If not, tune in tomorrow for the second half of my talk with DTM. Have a great day and get some work done.